Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. Hope you're enjoying your Sunday. Probably one person who is enjoying their Sunday is Anthony Joshua because, he flattens Francis Ngannou. Very picturesque highlight reel knockout. Bearing in mind what Tyson Fury couldn't do with Ngannou. It obviously looks very good on, if you want to compare and contrast, for Joshua. But pushing that aside for the moment, I think Joshua deserves a lot of praise, not just because he's knocked out Ngannou, shattered him, absolutely destroyed this supposedly immovable object. But I just think the way that he's come through his personal demons and the evident lack of confidence and the way in which he just seems so in limbo as a fighter and probably as a man, certainly as a fighter between, say, the first Ruiz fight up until almost, I'd say, the Helenius fight. It was like he was constantly second-guessing himself, constantly worried about what should I think? Am I doing this for me? What about my public perception? We saw the meltdown after the second Usyk fight. He lost twice on the bounce to Usyk. Lots of criticism. We live in an era of social media, rightly or wrongly, for the most part wrongly. Having to put up with all that stuff after having given so much effort, so much, the proverbial sweat, blood and tears to not just to his own achievements, but to the public themselves who were, he was selling out stadiums and then, he had that huge, and I think it was a huge dip. And now he seems to have found himself. Now, let's not get carried away here because Francis Ngannou is a novice boxer, not a novice combat sportsman, but a novice boxer who lost his only previous fight. And in my opinion, he did lose it. He floored Tyson Fury, but to me, Fury won that fight. But nevertheless, he gave an extremely good account of himself. And he then gets absolutely destroyed. I'm almost tempted to say humiliated, although I don't think he has been humiliated personally, but a lot of people will probably view it that way, by Anthony Joshua, who only a year ago there were huge question marks over. But the thing about Joshua is that he seems to have, despite the fact that, yes, he knocked flat a raw novice, sometimes it's the way in which you get your work done. Like if you're of a certain age, like I am, you will remember Mike Tyson coming through. And Mike Tyson was destroying people every month, all right? And they were, D-level fighters, okay? And then he bumps into, who was it? Who was the first person that took him distance was James Tillis. I'm doing this off memory, but I think it was James Tillis who took him 10 rounds and gave Tyson a lot of problems. And then I think he almost got taken. Yeah, there were a couple of others that took him almost the distance. Alfonso Ratliff went out in 2 rounds. I remember that, but there was another guy. Oh, it was Mitch Green. Of course it was. Mitch Green. Yeah, Mitch Green took him the distance. And people were saying, well, Tyson's been exposed. Tyson's been found out. Hard to believe now, but that's what they were saying at the time. But a lot of us, myself included, were saying, sometimes it's how you get your work done. Sometimes it's what you can read between the lines. Sometimes it's the intangibles. And I think with Joshua, that's what myself and quite a few others are seeing now. Because it in the sense of the man's psyche, his identity, between a year ago and now, it's chalk and cheese. The way he relaxed during the build-up to Ngannou, the way he was, focused, almost meditating in the dressing room beforehand, that face-to-face thing, he came across very, very relaxed, very, very well. The press conferences, he seemed great. You know, compare that to the meltdown in the after the second Usyk fight. Compare that to that, infamous IFL TV interview he gave 18 months ago, whenever it was, when he talked about, being a street guy and how he admires the gangsters and all this sort of stuff. And everything seems so forced and so fake and so sort of wannabe, and ultimately it made you cringe, and you thought, my God, this guy's losing it really badly. None of that's evident now. So how has he got from the dark place to the lighter place? Well, I'm sure there wasn't just one reason or even two or three reasons. There's probably a whole plethora of reasons and a whole group of people around him who've done that. I think Ben Davison deserves an awful lot of respect. Joshua still speaks highly of Derek James, but of course the logistics of it, James being in Texas and Joshua wants to be over here, and I understand that. But the fact that Davison's come in and being a very, very analytical, cerebral, precise, on-point trainer who likes to sort of go into dissect and deconstruct everything and then put it back together and explain everything. This seems to me to suit Joshua down to the ground. I've always thought that Joshua's issues are not necessarily technical. When you get to a very high level, the margin of difference is very, very slight, and you can improve technically to some degree, with the inevitable repetition. But some trainers, being a boxing trainer, a lot of the time it's like being an amateur psychologist almost. You've got to be in tune with your fighter. You've got to be able to understand what psychological buttons to press, and that takes time. You have to get to know the person, and you have to be able to read them, and you have to have that talent for being able to assess people. And Davison seems to be an excellent fit for Joshua. It's also worth mentioning that despite the fact Joshua clearly was in a very dark place psychologically, or kind of in no man's land, or in limbo maybe, he kept busy. And when you keep busy, when you keep trying, you say, I don't know what the answers are, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. What I'm not going to do is just going to sit here and stew in my own juice, because I know that if I do that, if I don't change, if things will never change unless I make an effort, unless I try different things, unless I do different things. As someone who is has worked for a long time with people with addictions, this is what we tell people who are kind of trying to find their way out of that hellish existence. Try everything, keep an open mind, take the things that are relevant to you, because the answers are in you, put them into your little mental toolbox, and then the art is knowing which tools to take out depending on the circumstances. Well, it's the same in life in general. You don't have to be an addict to understand that principle. And certainly in boxing, you need to be able to do that, to know which punch to throw at the correct time, to know when to take a round off, to know when to grab and hold, to know when to be offensive, to know when to be defensive. If all of that stuff comes with experience, and the way you get experience is that you try and try again. You keep going on. You keep doing it. You keep, moving forward. Now, with the exception of Joseph Parker, who has had an astonishing resurrection, 5 wins in a row now, beat Zhang last night. I thought that was a very, very close fight. A lot of people don't. They thought Parker won it wide, but all right, well, that's a video for another time maybe. But nevertheless, 5 wins in a row, having been knocked flat by Joe Joyce, and having beaten the person who twice beat Joe Joyce. This is, apart from Joe Parker, Anthony Joshua is the comeback kid. It's the comeback of the last few years, because he's now had 4 fights against reasonable opposition. I mean, I think Otto Wallin was a good opponent, although I believe they'd sparred a lot and fought in the amateurs as well, from what I've read. But so Joshua kind of knew Wallin, whereas when Wallin fought Fury, he didn't know. Fury wasn't that familiar with Wallin, I don't think. Yeah. Again, I get back to the fact that Ngannou was a novice, but nevertheless, I've seen, regardless of the quality of the opposition, I've seen an increase in confidence, a sharp increase in confidence. And I think it goes from, I think the turning point for me that I can see was when Joshua got that very, again, picturesque knockout against Hellenius, because he was struggling early on. You know, it was competitive early on. He had a bloodied nose, bloodied mouth, but he managed to do the things that he'd been working on with Derek James, and then landed that great knockout. And then he gets with Ben Davison, who he's always liked. He said, I've always liked him. I like the way he talks in interviews and so on. I like the way he talks about boxing. He has the Wallin result, and that sets up his confidence and his mentality for this big, blockbuster in Riyadh against Ngannou. And he absolutely flattens, knocks him out before he's hit the floor. The guy who gave Tyson Fury his bête noire or nemesis or whatever you want to call him, absolute fits. So Joshua, I'll use the phrase that everyone's using. Joshua is back, but I'm using it with tongue-in-cheek. I'm going to say that with tongue-in-cheek, because I don't think Joshua ever became a bad fighter. I think I've always had a lot of respect for Anthony Joshua, because he learned on the job. I mean, I know he won the Olympic gold medal and everything, but as a professional, he was kind of fast-tracked, got the IBF title, and then he avoided no one. He avoided no mandatories. He had that very dark period in his career, which he came through. And they say, it's a good description of the man if you can come through those dark periods and work through them and emerge stronger. I'm someone who thinks that phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, is bullshit. I really do. You tell that to a quadriplegic who's been in a car accident, they'll probably disagree with you. But nevertheless, you can turn the negatives into a positive if you learn from them, and the situation is recoverable. And I don't think Joshua ever became a bad fighter. It's kind of like the old saying, well, form is temporary and talent is permanent. And he is only 34 still, which is relatively young for a heavyweight. So he's got another couple of years in him, at least. Now, you could also, I think it's worth mentioning the public perception, which has changed from almost ridicule to one of, again, I use this phrase, Joshua is back. That's the public perception. I'm saying it sarcastically almost, but that's how people perceive him. And if you compare that to what's happened to Tyson Fury, who was on top of the world after the third Wilder fight, and then, Dillian Whyte knocked out 2 fights previously by Povetkin, but got the second fight, knocked Povetkin out, and then fought Fury, and the build-up to that was definitely, everything was steeped in Fury's favour because there was an argument over the purse split and so on, and Whyte wouldn't do any of the press, and he didn't seem happy, Whyte. And also I think Fury played Whyte very well in the sense that he diffused him. Very crafty. That's one of the occasions when I agree that Tyson Fury was very good at what they call mind games. He diffused Whyte. And he knocked him out. He did the business, looked okay against Whyte. Not bad. But I think Whyte's punch resistance was seriously on the wane by that point. And then he fought Chisora, which was a complete farce, a mismatch, should never ever have taken place. Horrible fight. On pay-per-view, can you believe it? Frank Warren, we're doing it for the fans. No, you're not, mate. 27 quid, what's that crap? With that undercard, are you kidding me? He wasn't kidding anyone. Good old Frank. But yeah, an obscene fight that should never have taken place, absolute farce. And then we know what happened with Ngannou. So Fury is now gone from being on top of the world to sinking gradually. And for someone who claims to have, very serious mental health issues and diagnoses, that can't be a good thing for him. So he's kind of almost painted himself into a corner with this Usyk thing. He's got to get through Usyk, which is by no means a foregone conclusion. And that's a 2-fight deal as well. And then he says, well, I'll fight Joshua. Well, with Fury, I never trust anything that comes out of his mouth whatsoever. He avoided Usyk for a long while. People pretend he didn't. His fanboys say, oh, no, they believe all the slop that's fed to them by Fury himself and his team and Frank Warren. He did duck Usyk. He got paid into a corner where he had to fight the guy. He got offered an astronomical amount of money to do it in Saudi, as they all are these days. And, it's a 2-fight deal. Is he going to beat Usyk? See, if he does beat Usyk, he'll be the man again, as far as I'm concerned, because Usyk's beaten Joshua twice. And again, we shouldn't get too carried away with Joshua just because he beat Ngannou and Ngannou gave Fury hell. But he's got to beat Usyk. If he does beat Usyk twice, or maybe they'll have a rubber match if it's one each, you just don't know. And then he beats Joshua, I'll take back everything I've said about you, Tyson. But I want to see you do it. And wake me up when we get there, because I gave up listening to what comes out of Tyson Fury's mouth a long, long time ago. I'm still not entirely convinced the Usyk fight will go ahead with Fury. And Fury, although he looks leaner now, and, thinner in the face, and he almost looks too thin. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I'm seeing something that isn't there. I don't know. But I do wonder just how much his body can recover from the abuse he's put it through over the years. But we'll see. I want the fight with Usyk to go ahead, and I want the best man to win. If it's Fury, that's absolutely fine by me. If it's Usyk, great, no problem. But anyway, I've digressed slightly because this is an Anthony Joshua video. But to compare and contrast the sort of descendancy of Joshua, and then he rises up again to the ascendancy of Fury, and now he's dipping in public perception. Because don't forget, like I say, form is temporary, talent is form is temporary, talent is permanent. It is interesting to compare and contrast them. And I wonder what Usyk's thinking. He's probably thinking, yeah, you get on with it. I'm quietly going about my business, and when I get Fury in the ring, there's going to be hell to pay. That's probably the next big one, isn't it, coming up? But anyway, just a few thoughts on Anthony Joshua. I say viva Anthony Joshua. Well done for coming back. The job's not done yet, of course, but my current 2 favourite heavyweights are Joshua and Parker, and for the same reason. They've both resurrected their careers. Resurrected might be a bit melodramatic, but you know what I mean. Certainly in the case of Parker, he looked pretty much done and dusted at that level when he got flattened by Joyce. With Joshua losing twice to Usyk on points is no great tragedy, because Usyk is an immense talent. But the way he's come back is, I think, laudable, absolutely brilliant. And it's good to have him back in the mix at the very, very top again, in the conversation as to who is the best heavyweight. Because never mind what Eddie Hearn said. Eddie Hearn's going to say what Eddie Hearn's going to say. He's the best, he's the baddest man on the planet. Yeah, all right, Eddie, calm down, mate. We know you promote him and so on. But he's a good fighter, Joshua. And humble pie time for those that have always slagged him off, I think. Anyway, what do you think? Comments below. Who do you think Joshua should fight next? Might be the IBF title, the vacant IBF title, against Hrgovic. Filip Hrgovic, yeah. But let me know what you think. Comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you can do that and hit that subscribe button, that'd help. And also on the like button as well. Looking forward to reading your comments. I'll catch you later. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and bye for now.